Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. Situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, this land witnessed the dawn of human achievement in urbanization. Much more will be discussed in this deep dive on the birthplace of human ingenuity. Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, is often regarded as the birthplace of human civilization. The name Mesopotamia, which translates land where two mighty rivers shaped everything that followed. These rivers were more than just sources of water. They were the lifeblood of the region, providing fertile soil for agriculture and transportation routes for trade. Long before great empires rose to power, ancient people began settling in the lowlands between these two rivers around 10,000 BCE. This is when agriculture began to emerge, fundamentally changing how humans interacted with the environment. People transitioned from hunting and gathering to farming. Because of the unpredictable flooding patterns of the Tigris and Euphrates, early settlers had to develop sophisticated irrigation techniques. These irrigation systems channeled water from the rivers to crops, allowing for surplus food production. With more food came larger populations, and with larger populations came the need for more organized social structures. By around 3500 BCE, the Sumerians, one of the earliest known cultures in Mesopotamia, had begun to build the first cities in history. Eridu, Uruk, and Ur were among the first major settlements that evolved from small farming villages into complex urban centers. These early cities weren't just places to live, they were vibrant centers of culture, trade, and politics. Uruk, often considered the world's first true city, grew to be a center of power, with massive walls, intricate architecture, and a burgeoning economy. It was during this time that the Sumerians began to develop what would become one of their most significant contributions to human civilization: writing. In cuneiform, the Sumerians also worshipped a pantheon of gods, each associated with different aspects of life. Anu, the sky god, was considered the king of the gods. Enlil, the god of air and storms, held authority over the earth. And Inanna, the goddess of love and war, was a central figure in the Sumerian mythological cycle. Religion played an essential role in shaping Mesopotamian culture. Each city-state was dedicated to a specific god or goddess, and ziggurats, a massive stepped pyramids, were built as temples for these deities. The ziggurats were not just places of worship. They were symbols of a city's power and a focal point for the community. These temples served as the economic, political, and cultural heart of the city. The rise of city-states. As Mesopotamia transitioned from farming villages to urbanized societies, the cities of Sumer began to flourish around 3000 BCE. The rise of these early city-states marked a transformative shift in human civilization. Uruk, often considered the world's first true city, was at the forefront of this transformation. It had great walls, grand temples, and sophisticated architecture. Uruk's monumental scale gave rise to a new concept of urban life, something completely different from the rural settlements that came before it. Uruk wasn't just a political or religious center, it was a commercial hub. Its bustling markets attracted traders from across the region. Goods like textiles, grain, metals, and pottery were exchanged, and the city's access to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers made it a critical point for trade routes that stretched into other ancient civilizations in the east and south. The city-state of Uruk was also deeply influenced by religion. The Sumerians believed that their gods governed every aspect of life. Anu, the sky god, was at the top of the pantheon, but the most important deity in Uruk was Inanna, the goddess of love, fertility, and war. The city's ziggurat was dedicated to Inanna, and it became a focal point for worship and social gatherings. During this period was the invention of writing in Uruk, around 3200 BCE. The Sumerians developed cuneiform, one of the earliest known writing systems on clay tablets. Scribes, highly trained individuals who knew how to read and write, held significant power in these city-states. They were the keepers of knowledge, recording important events, royal decrees, and even the mythological stories that would later be preserved for millennia, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Akkadian Empire and Babylonian rise. By 2334 BCE, Mesopotamia was on the brink of a new era. The city-states of Sumer, with their vibrant trade networks and religious structures, had flourished for centuries. But their independent existence was about to be challenged, with Sargon of Akkad, a man whose ambition would forever change the political landscape of Mesopotamia. Sargon, a former cupbearer to the king of Kish, rose to power in a time of increasing tensions between the Sumerian city-states. He was an exceptional military leader, and with a small but skilled army, he launched a series of successful conquests that would bring nearly all of Mesopotamia under his control. The formation of the Akkadian Empire around 2334 BCE marked the first true empire in history. Sargon's Akkadian Empire was groundbreaking in many ways. He established a centralized government and a standing army, crucial elements for managing the vast territories under his control. For the first time, the people of Mesopotamia were ruled by a single leader, and his influence reached as far as the Mediterranean coast and the Iranian plateau. But Sargon's greatest achievement was uniting the diverse cultures and city-states of Mesopotamia under one banner. Sargon's reign, lasting over 50 years, was also marked by cultural achievements. Under his rule, the Akkadian language became the lingua franca of Mesopotamia, replacing Sumerian as the dominant spoken language. Akkadian was used in administration, diplomacy, and even literature. The Akkadian script, derived from cuneiform, spread far beyond the borders of the empire, influencing the development of writing across the region. Akkadian art flourished as well, with royal inscriptions, sculptures, and reliefs celebrating Sargon's military victories and divine favor. These artworks often depicted the king as a semi-divine figure, reinforcing his authority and connection to the gods. However, after Sargon's death, the Akkadian Empire began to weaken. It faced internal rebellions, invasions from outside forces, and a decline in central control. By the 21st century BCE, the Akkadian Empire had fractured into smaller, more fragmented regions. It was during this period of instability that the city of Babylon, previously a minor city-state in Mesopotamia, rose to prominence. Babylon was located along the Euphrates River, a prime location for trade and agriculture, and by the early 18th century BCE, it became the center of a new empire under King Hammurabi. Hammurabi, a king from Babylon, is perhaps best known for his law code, one of the first comprehensive written legal systems in history. But his reign, which lasted from 1792 to 1750 BCE, was also marked by significant political and military accomplishments. Hammurabi's rise to power began with a series of strategic alliances and military campaigns. By the time of his death, he had successfully united much of Mesopotamia, including Akkad, Sumer, and the northern regions. Unlike the former ruler Sargon, who expanded through conquest, Hammurabi used a mix of diplomacy, marriage alliances, and military strength to solidify his rule. His military conquests were crucial for expanding Babylon's territory. Hammurabi fought battles against rival city-states like Larsa and Eshnunna and absorbed their lands into his growing empire. However, it was not just military power that made Hammurabi successful. It was his ability to maintain control over these diverse peoples and regions. The Assyrian Empire. As the Akkadian and Babylonian empires faded, a new power began to rise in the north, the Assyrian Empire. Emerging from the city of Ashur, the Assyrians would become one of the most formidable military powers the world had ever seen. By the 9th century BCE, the Assyrians had transformed from a regional power into a massive empire stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. The Assyrian Empire's foundation was laid by the city of Ashur, named after the god Ashur, the chief deity of the Assyrians. This city was the spiritual and political heart of Assyria, and it was here that the early Assyrian kings solidified their power. But it was under King Tiglath-Pileser III, around 745 BCE, that the Assyrians began to extend their dominion over vast territories, bringing much of the ancient Near East under their control. The key to Assyria's rise was its unparalleled military prowess. The Assyrians were the first to field a professional standing army, using highly trained soldiers equipped with iron weapons. Their military tactics were revolutionary. They were experts in siege warfare, using battering rams and siege towers to break through city walls. The Assyrians also developed an elite cavalry unit and chariots, making their forces more mobile and deadly on the battlefield. Assyrian kings such as Tiglath-Pileser III, Shalmaneser III, and Sennacherib led campaigns across the Near East, conquering Israel, Syria, Babylon, and even Egypt. Their military campaigns were marked by brutality. Defeated enemies were often subjected to mass deportations, where entire populations were relocated to different parts of the empire. This was a tactic to weaken the morale of conquered people and prevent rebellion. One of the most impressive achievements of the Assyrians was the development of the city of Nineveh as the imperial capital under King Sennacherib in the 7th century BCE. Nineveh became a cultural and administrative hub, home to grand palaces, temples, and gardens. Also in the city was the world's first libraries, filled with thousands of clay tablets documenting knowledge in fields such as astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and literature. The most famous work found in this library is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which had been preserved from the Sumerian and Babylonian traditions. The Neo-Babylonian Empire. As the Assyrian Empire crumbled in 6012 BCE, the stage was set for a resurgence in Babylonian power. The city of Babylon, once a proud city-state under Hammurabi, rose again under the leadership of a king who would become one of the most renowned rulers of the ancient world, King Nebuchadnezzar II. His reign from 605 to 562 BCE would mark the zenith of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. After the fall of Nineveh, Nebuchadnezzar II inherited a Babylon that was weakened by centuries of warfare. However, through a combination of military prowess, political acumen, and monumental construction projects, he revitalized the empire and turned Babylon into the most magnificent city of the ancient world. Nebuchadnezzar was a brilliant military strategist. He led successful campaigns in Syria and Palestine, including the famous conquest of Jerusalem in 586 BCE, where he captured the kingdom of Judah and deported many of its inhabitants to Babylon. This event, known as the Babylonian exile, had profound effects on the Jewish people, influencing their religious and cultural development. While the conquest of Judah is one of the more notorious events of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, his legacy is largely defined by his transformation of Babylon into a symbol of power, culture, and splendor. Nebuchadnezzar's rebuilding of Babylon was nothing short of spectacular. He expanded the city's walls, making them some of the most formidable fortifications of the ancient world. The famous Ishtar Gate, adorned with blue glazed brick reliefs of lions and dragons, became the grand entrance to the city. The gate was dedicated to the goddess Ishtar, the patron deity of Babylon, and was part of a larger ceremonial gateway system that symbolized the might of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The Ishtar Gate was just one of many architectural wonders Nebuchadnezzar commissioned. Perhaps the most famous of all was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, often regarded as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Nebuchadnezzar oversaw the construction of monumental palaces and temples throughout the city. The most important of these was the Etemenanke ziggurat, believed by many to be the inspiration for the biblical Tower of Babel. The ziggurat was a colossal structure, reaching over 300 feet high and dedicated to Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. The ziggurat's construction symbolized Nebuchadnezzar's devotion to Marduk and his desire to elevate Babylon's status as a divine center of worship. Its sheer scale and grandeur made it one of the most impressive architectural achievements of the ancient world. Religion played an integral role in Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Nebuchadnezzar dedicated much of his wealth and efforts to the religious life of Babylon, performing lavish rituals to honor the gods and ensure the prosperity of his empire. He built temples for Marduk and other gods, organized festivals, and supported the priesthood, consolidating both religious and political power. His reign saw the flourishing of Babylonian culture, with advances in art, science, and literature. However, the Neo-Babylonian Empire was not to last forever. After Nebuchadnezzar's death in 562 BCE, his successors struggled to maintain control over the empire. The empire's vast wealth and prestige were slowly eroded by internal strife and external threats. In 539 BCE, the Persian Empire, under the leadership of Cyrus the Great, overthrew the Babylonians. The Persians, utilizing clever tactics, diverted the Euphrates River and entered the city through the dried riverbed, bypassing the famously impregnable walls of Babylon. The fall of Babylon marked the end of the Neo-Babylonian Empire and the beginning of the Persian Empire's dominance over the ancient Near East. Though Babylon fell, the city's cultural and intellectual legacy endured. The Babylonians had made lasting contributions to astronomy, mathematics, literature, and law. Nebuchadnezzar's reign in particular was a golden age for Babylon, and his ambitious building projects left a lasting mark on the ancient world. Cyrus's policy of respecting the customs and religions of the people he conquered was groundbreaking for his time. Unlike previous empires that often imposed their rule through fear and oppression, Cyrus promoted a system of governance that allowed for a degree of autonomy while still maintaining central control. Following Cyrus's death in 530 BCE, his son Cambyses II briefly succeeded him, expanding the empire into Egypt. This is covered on my other video playlist, The History of Egypt. Check it out and subscribe to the channel. Mesopotamian contributions to humanity. Mesopotamia's contributions to humanity are immeasurable. The legacy of this ancient civilization extends far beyond the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates. From the invention of writing to advances in astronomy, mathematics, and law, Mesopotamians left an indelible mark on the world, shaping not just the ancient Near East, but the entire trajectory of human civilization. One of Mesopotamia's most significant contributions to human civilization is the invention of writing. The Sumerians developed cuneiform, one of the first written systems in history. Writing allowed for the creation of monumental literature, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known works of literature. This epic, a story of a hero's quest for immortality, reflects the deep philosophical and existential questions that Mesopotamians grappled with. Their written records also document legal codes, religious rituals, and historical events, allowing future generations to learn about the past. The development of law. The Code of Hammurabi. Another revolutionary contribution from Mesopotamia was the establishment of formalized law. The Code of Hammurabi, created by the Babylonian king Hammurabi around 1750 BCE, is one of the oldest and most well-preserved legal texts in the world. This code included 282 laws, covering everything from trade and family relations to criminal justice. Hammurabi's laws were inscribed on a massive stone pillar, allowing them to be publicly displayed for all to see. The principle of An eye for an eye, the idea of proportional justice, became one of the core tenets of the code. But the laws were not applied equally to all. The punishments for crimes varied depending on social class, with harsher punishments for lower classes and more leniency for the elite. While the code was harsh by today's standards, it marked a significant development in the creation of civil law, laying the groundwork for later legal systems in the ancient world and influencing modern concepts of justice. Advances in mathematics and astronomy. Mesopotamians were pioneers in mathematics and astronomy. They developed a sophisticated understanding of numbers and the heavens, which profoundly influenced the future of science. The Sumerians created a base 60 number system, still used today in measuring time and angles. The concept of dividing an hour into 60 minutes and a circle into 360 degrees originates from this system. Mesopotamian astronomers were able to chart the movements of the stars, the moon, and the planets. They developed a lunar calendar based on the cycles of the moon, which helped to organize religious festivals, agricultural cycles, and trade. Their observations were incredibly accurate, and some of their astronomical texts have been preserved on clay tablets, detailing planetary movements and eclipses. These early astronomers didn't just map the stars for academic purposes, they believed the heavens had a direct impact on human affairs. The movements of the stars and planets were seen as divine omens, influencing everything from the fate of kings to the success of harvests. Mesopotamians were also incredible architects and engineers. Their cities were filled with monumental structures, including the ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid used as a temple. The ziggurats of Ur and Babylon were not only religious centers, but also symbols of political and economic power. Babylon, under Nebuchadnezzar II, became a marvel of ancient architecture. The Ishtar Gate, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was decorated with glazed bricks featuring lions, dragons, and bulls. This gate, along with the Hanging Gardens and other grand buildings, was part of Nebuchadnezzar's ambitious campaign to make Babylon the most magnificent city of its time. Medicine and technology. Mesopotamians were also innovative in the field of medicine. They had an understanding of basic hygiene and used a wide variety of plant-based medicines. Medical texts from Babylon describe treatments for ailments like fever, infections, and digestive issues. They even performed early forms of surgery, such as draining abscesses and setting broken bones. Mesopotamians were also skilled in crafting tools and pottery. The wheel, first developed in Mesopotamia around 3500 BCE, revolutionized transportation and pottery making, and its influence spread throughout the ancient world. This technological advancement enabled more efficient trade and communication, laying the foundation for further developments in engineering, manufacturing, literature, art, and philosophy. Mesopotamian literature and art left a lasting legacy in human culture. The Epic of Gilgamesh not only gives us a glimpse into the world view of the Mesopotamians, but also addresses universal themes of friendship, mortality, and the search for meaning, questions that still resonate with us today. Mesopotamian art reflected the deep connection between the divine and the human. Statues and reliefs of gods, kings, and mythological creatures were created to honor the deities and celebrate the power of rulers. These works were often found in temples and palaces, reinforcing the divine right of kings and the central role of religion in everyday life. The lasting legacy of Mesopotamian civilization. Although Mesopotamian civilization eventually declined, its contributions to human society are still felt today. The systems of writing, law, mathematics, and astronomy laid the groundwork for the civilizations that followed. Many of the principles developed in Mesopotamia, such as the rule of law, the use of writing for record-keeping, and the study of the stars, continue to influence the modern world. From the first cities to the development of science and culture, Mesopotamian innovations were truly ahead of their time. They laid the foundation for the entire ancient world and continue to shape our lives today, reminding us that the story of humanity is built upon the knowledge and achievements of those who came before us. Mesopotamia may no longer exist as a unified civilization, but its legacy continues to shape the modern world. From the first cities and empires to advancements in writing, science, and law, Mesopotamian culture provided the foundation for much of the human experience we take for granted today. From the Epic of Gilgamesh to the rule of Hammurabi, the enduring influence of Mesopotamia can be seen in the way we govern, communicate, and understand the world around us. The Mesopotamians remind us that civilization's roots run deep and their innovations still echo through time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient Mesopotamia, subscribe and share. Have any questions or thoughts on Mesopotamian civilization? Leave them in the comments below.